Hey, it's Michael Angelo Caruso. I'm here at the Grand Traverse Resort. It's in Traverse City, Michigan. I think the most beautiful part of Michigan is in this upper western part of the thumb. And I'm going to be going on stage to deliver a keynote in just a few minutes. I think the room is set for something like 300 people, and I've met two of them. So it's an interesting mindset that you have to get into just to walk into a room with a bunch of strangers and hold forth on some sort of content that you're reasonably familiar with. An additional challenge a lot of speakers have is memorizing that content, getting that familiarity, rehearsing it, and so on. So I wanted to run down a few of those steps that I practice to get to that place where the audience thinks that I'm not reading to them, I'm extremely authentic, and that everything's going according to plan. You're gonna hear some noise here because I'm in a hallway before people go into the big room. You might even see some cameos behind me. The first way to practice content is sequentially, and a lot of people do this exclusively, which is a mistake. So they start at the beginning and they go to the end of the presentation. Beginning to the end, beginning to the end, beginning to the end. Now it's fine if you're trying to get the sequence down, but you'll see in a second there are some ways that put depth and texture and context to the rehearsal. The second way I'm going to tell you about is something I learned way back in high school. It was called Woodshedding. And so if there are five parts to your speech or presentation, you would of course practice them in sequence so that you could get them down, but you might also just take section 2 or just take section 4. Section 5 is extremely important because that's where your call to action is. Section 1 is extremely important because that's when you're going to be most nervous on stage. So you can take these sections and woodshed them, take them apart. This term comes from back when we were in band. You know, if you were playing second chair cornet and you wanted to be first chair, you'd have to challenge, that's the word we used, for the chair. And you and the second chair or the first chair person would sit in front of the band director, and the band director would choose 16 bars out of a piece of music, and it would be unannounced. You'd have to have the whole thing down cold. And then whoever played it the best sits first chair the rest of the time. So woodshedding is about taking that one little section and over and over and over again without regard for what's going on in the rest of the speech. So it's a different way of thinking about rehearsal. A third way of practicing your speech is focusing on the transitions. A lot of people are okay with the modular approach, like part 1, part 2, part 3, but they get to the end of part 1 and then can't remember what part 2 is. I mean, once they get into part 2, they're fine, but they need that trigger word or they need that transition that helps them get there. The fourth way that I suggest you practice speeches and presentation is to actually pull them apart. So in the speech that I'm giving in a few minutes, there's a sequence of 5 dates, 5 years. And to practice that sequence, I've pulled them out of the speech. I wrote them down. I had assigned keywords in my brain. That 1843 keyword was this, the 1846 keyword was this. And I wouldn't be doing that if I was just running through it sequentially. So you disassemble the speech and then you reassemble it. And there's something about that gets the brain to think differently. So it's quite valuable. So 5 ways total today. So far I've talked about sequential, which is front to back, top to bottom. Woodshedding, which is the working in sections. Transitions, which is moving from piece to piece. Disassembling and then reassembling again. And then the 5th way I want to share with you is called spatial, S-P-A-T-I-A-L. I was speaking in the South one time and I said, it's spatial. And they said, it sure is spatial. Spatial, about that kind of spatial. So spatial rehearsal works like this, is that if I'm going to start the presentation, say at the podium, then I know that that section is at the podium. So I would practice it that way, right? And when it's time to move, say, to another part of the stage, or what we call in the business a satellite location, I would physically, during practice, move to that satellite location. So now the script, which I'm still trying to memorize and put together in my brain, is being triggered by movement. You see, so it's yet another way to get really familiar with the content and bang it when you get up in front of people. If you're interested in this type of content, you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I also do a podcast called Talk to Me. It's available on Podbean, iTunes, and all the major platforms. Good luck with all your presentations, and wish me luck right now.